Greetings my friends, how are you doing? This is Zed from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I am back to see a very cool friend of mine, Paul Adamson. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Good to see you after so long.
It has been too long.
It has indeed.
Yeah.
Now, if you've been watching my channel for some time, you'll be familiar with Paul already. A number of years ago, we recorded two tutorials, one on cookser carving and one on making a birch bark knife sheath, which have proven to be very popular videos. Yeah. And since then, people have been asking me, when are you getting Paul back? So we finally had the opportunity to meet up, take some time out of Paul's very busy schedule, and he's very kindly allowed me to come down and document some more tutorials for you to watch. Now, what you're going to be watching in this particular video is a spoon carving tutorial where Paul is going to demonstrate from start to finish how to carve a standard eating spoon. Now, what we're going to do, we're also going to film a second spoon carving tutorial after this, in which Paul is going to demonstrate his process on how to do production spoon carving. Now, how would you kind of define production spoon carving? This is essentially taking the same process that people are going to see in this video and condensing it down in order to carve a spoon a lot quicker. Would that be correct?
So the idea is to make several spoons of the same standard design and to have a very efficient way of making those spoons. And to know beforehand what it is you're going to make. You're not trying to create it there and then and spend hours fiddling with a new area that you've never done before. You're just going to crack on and make spoons and make really functional, efficient spoons without wasting any time really. And you can apply it to lots of different shapes of spoons as well.
Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing this myself.
Should be all right.
It's the first time I'm going to be sitting now watching your entirety process from start to finish on carving a spoon.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, we're going to crack on with this tutorial. What we're going to do, we're going to look at some examples of Paul's work in case you're not familiar with what he does, and then from there we're going to move on and get straight on with the tutorial. Now, one very important thing to mention as we move forward in this tutorial, and I'm going to reference this throughout this video, and that is Paul has very kindly put together a template for you to download for free, similar to the spoon that he's going to be demonstrating in his video. There's going to be a link to that in the description and also pinned to the top of the comments here on YouTube. When you click on that link, it will take you to a page on his website. It's kindly set up specifically for you guys. And on that page, you're going to be able to download the template as well as see the myriad of spoons he has for sale, because he sells a lot of his greenwood work and he carves a myriad of different things. Spoons, cooksers, birch bark work. You're very, very kind of established in a greenwood working space.
Yeah, it's all good fun. I've always enjoyed carving spoons. People seem to know me for the cooksers, probably your fault. But over time, I've 17 years I've been carving spoons now.
Wow.
So things have improved, and like everybody, you always want to try a little bit better, improve a bit more, learn something new, and that applies to me like anybody else that's doing it for the first time. So that's probably why I do the production spoon carving, is that, you know, once you get up to speed, all you can do is keep making more, and I love making. It's great.
The one quick caveat I forgot to add is that Paul actually teaches professionally up and down the United Kingdom. He's a very well-known and very well-respected teacher, and he has taught countless people how to carve spoons, how to carve cooksers, etc. So he's very, very au fait in terms of the teaching space. So Paul, with your kind permission, we'll get straight into this tutorial.
Let's do it.
So without further ado, guys, hope you enjoy the rest of this video where Paul Adamson is going to be teaching you how to carve a spoon.
Boom.
So Paul, we're looking at a selection of your spoons here. Where would you like to start?
Where would I like to start? Well, we'll start with the top row if you like. So most people, when they think of a wooden spoon and carving one, they think of an eating spoon. So these are eating spoons, and you can play around with the design as much as you like. You can play around with the bowl shape, the length of the handle, and how much crank it has. So the one thing that makes an eating spoon different to most others is that this lifts up here. Or another way of looking at it, if that was on the table flat, this kicks up. But the idea is that it goes in and delivers food to your mouth, rather than this being pointing down there. That's the big thing about an eating spoon. What else does an eating spoon? Well, it's got to work well in a bowl. It's got to move nicely across the edges of the bowl and clean all that food out. I think it does anyway. and it's got to work well in your mouth. It's got to be nice and thin so it can go into your mouth. Try and find you a really thin one. I've got a really thin one, that's thinner. See? And smooth, you know. And sometimes smooth is achieved better without sandpaper, because your knives are sharpened to hopefully down to about 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 grit, something like that, which is way smoother than sandpaper is normally. And that's the main things. Oh, and it's got to feel nice in your hand. I tend to hold them like that. So a nice bit for your thumb, something to put against your forefinger there, and away you go. But you don't have to be this precise about things, you know. If you're just starting out, just make something very, very simple. And simple doesn't really get any more simple than these ones at the front. The polar opposite to an eating spoon really is a teaspoon, and that's what I call a teaspoon. So all it's got to do is stir and put sugar in if you like sugar, so just enough of a bowl to do that and to flick your tea bag out. And I make hundreds of these, and they sell like hotcakes at stalls because they're quite quick to make, you know, 10 minutes at the most. And it's just nice for people to watch you make them, which is another reason why I got into making production spoons, making lots of spoons, is that I would have hundreds of these left over from, you know, a couple of weekends of working, and eventually I'd get onto them and I'd finish them off and sell them the next time I did a show, or was it a website, on the website or something like that. And they're simple because there's no crank, so they're straight, so there's a lot less time involved in making a straight spoon than there is a cranked one. Less skill as well. It's smaller, obviously. These shapes here are much easier to achieve than these shapes here. So it's all about saving time and still making something that's functional, kind of looks okay and does the trick. A cooking spoon is just a large teaspoon basically. It's the same idea, for my shapes anyway, that I like to make. It just takes a couple more minutes to make than one of these. And these are kind of like in between. These are my wibbly wobbly ones. These are long handled teaspoons, which are perfect for cafetières, and you get a longer, you got a longer drop into your pot for stirring. It's great for that.
So starting up from the top left here, our left, do you want to be talking through each of the spoons briefly?
Oh, yeah, I can do. These are out the kitchen. These three have been used a lot. There's a cafetière spoon. It's had lots and lots of stirring action. Still going strong after about 5 years. So that just shows you, even a quickly made spoon out of a reasonably soft wood like birch, it's going to last you a long time. And very old cooking spoon, very simple shape. Again, you see it's one of the curry ones, that one. It's seen some serious action. What we got? That's the one I've been eating with for the last 3 or 4 years. Undecorated, nothing fancy. It's just a straightforward eating spoon, but it's probably my favourite. I absolutely love using that thing. It's brilliant. I stir my tea with it as well. I'm quite lazy in the morning. This was a nice tidy one that I made for a show, entered a competition and what have you. Just a bit of decoration. This is basket weave, birch leaf, a bit of milk paint. I used to make a lot of children's ones, which are basically just scaled down by, I don't know, about a third, is it, something like that, on the height, and about half on the bowl. When we had kids, you know, they couldn't handle something like that. It'd be silly really to watch them eat their porridge. So I made these small ones, and they're quite popular. So I made dozens with different designs on hot air balloons and rockets and all sorts of stuff. Actually, these are the most pleasure I've had making spoons, is making these. I love doing those. They were great. That led on to wanting to put those sort of patterns onto grown-up spoons, if you like. So I started to do. Oh, here we go. Started to make these with sailing ships on. I used to love making those. Like I say, I've been doing it for so long now that these are quite old, some of these. If you don't want to, if you get a nice figured piece of wood like this, there's no need to decorate it. It's doing all the doing all the fun bit for you, you see. But they are harder to carve. It's a much denser wood, especially the darker area, and the transition between the two, your knife can really slip on there. It's quite hard to get a decent finish. I did some weather spoons, so I had elemental spoons, so I had fire, air and what have you, and just tried to do different things there. Then I got into ferns, and that's kind of stayed for the last sort of 5 years really. This was the first one I made, then I made lots like it, and that moved over to these smaller sections. It actually looks like a fern leaf, you know, rather than an interpretation of it. That's what's ended up on the Cuxers now, as kind of a staple thing that I like to do. And the reason why I did that was I wanted to get away from basket weave. Now you've got one next to it. I got a little bit fed up with the repetition. It's an old one, so please excuse it. That's probably a nice one, these ones. So I got a bit fed up with doing the same thing, and you can do different types of complicated weavy patterns, but it takes forever, and it was just frustrating me. So I wanted to free up a bit, and once I started doing sailing ships and things like this, and the ferns, I just loved it. I found them far more interesting to make, and they sold just as well. So I thought, why not?
So today, what spoon are we going to be carving today?
We're going to carve something along the lines of this shape. Plenty of crank in it, and tight corners. So you'll see all sorts of difficult processes. Hopefully nice and thin by the time I finished it. And a bit of a finial, you know. This is what I tend to put on all my spoons now, and it was all started when I started doing the leaf scoops. So I wanted the top of the leaf to look like it had just fallen off the tree. I call it the petiole, and it's the top of the main vein of the leaf. So I started putting it on all my spoons as a little thing. Everyone's got a little thing that they like to do, a ball or a star or whatever. Almost pointless, but you know, sometimes you've got to move away from just functionality and just have a bit of fun. But I have been known to stab a bit of sausage and pop it in my mouth with the pointy bit, so they do have a little bit of function. We haven't talked about sort of these sort of things. So when you do a lot of cooking, you do most of it with something like that, stirring it in a pan, making a pancake batter. Straight cooking spoons are just perfect for the majority of things. When you want to dish up food, you really just want a shovel. If you've got a baking tray full of lasagna or something, you just chop it up and go plonk, and lots of food can be served. It's not always the right thing though, so with liquids, especially when I'm making pancakes, I use ladles. This is one of my older ones. Very cranked, but it was a bent piece of wood, so that's all nice and strong. The fibres are all flowing through. And a deeper bowl. It's only a small one. I actually made this for tomato sauce for doing pizzas. I wanted to get the sauce, pour it onto the dough, and then use the back of the spoon like they do, like the pros. And it worked really good for that, but it just gets used for whatever really. Make them on a bigger scale, and you can serve like you can with this, with slightly sloppier food. You know, if you've got a big pot full of stew or something like that, that's probably more appropriate than that one. Yeah, it's all good. Okay, so I thought I'd talk about sourcing wood and the types of wood that you're going to need for the spoons that you've seen on the table. It comes in lots of different shapes and sizes, but one of the most important things to sort of get your head around really is woodland management work, and why wood becomes available and where you can get it from. So I'm very lucky that I've spent over 20 years in the tree game. So I've done arboriculture at lots of different levels. I used to climb trees, I used to fell trees at ground level, manage woodlands, and I've worked in city areas climbing to the top of big trees. And I'm used to getting lots of woods, and this is why I got into all of this. I used to bring wood home, didn't have any skills, didn't know what to do with it, and everyone got fed up with me making these piles of wood everywhere. So I decided to get into this, and I went on a bushcraft course, and they showed me how to do that 17 years ago, and I've loved every minute of it ever since. So basically, getting wood, you either need to be qualified and you need to have permission, and if you don't, just find someone that has those two things. So we'll talk about the types of wood that you can use, and this is typically the diameter of a sapling that you might thin out of something that you would find on the edge of the woodland over there. And you can see there's lots of trees growing next to each other. In woodland management work, you would thin out the majority of those to allow the remaining trees to grow to become mature trees faster and to establish the woodland quicker. And you would remove those trees before they died, because they would naturally die, you see, if you didn't. And if you remove it when it's green and still alive, you can do things with that wood. You can turn it into products, you can store it as firewood, you can do whatever you like with it. And this is typically the size of one of those trees, and if you were to remove this section of wood here, you'd be able to get one, if not two, of these spoons on either side. You see, if you split the wood. So that's perfect, and that's what most people are going to make the spoons from. If we just look at these two trees here, these are moving on a bit. We're getting some decent material here, quite substantial though, so you're going to have to get in contact with a tree surgeon, or again have lots of trees on your property that you can make use of. It still applies here with thinning trees. You've got two very next to each other that are finding it quite difficult to form canopies. So it's best if you remove one to let the other one do its thing. And people have quite an unusual response to tree felling. They think it's always a bad thing, and it is if you fell in the wrong tree. If you were to fell both these trees, that would be wrong. But here, felling one would be a beneficial thing, and it would let a lot more light in, and then we can get a lot of young saplings coming up and greening up and doing their thing. And you can have different ages of trees and different types of trees and ground flora and a healthier, mature specimen. So this sort of stuff you could get 4 spoons out of. You split this into quarters and you can get 4 spoons out of there, if not more. And what we'll move on to next is how to do that. Okay, so here we've got a larger tree than the last one we looked at. I think the last one probably was about that kind of diameter, but it doesn't really matter. What I wanted to show you is how I actually did make this particular spoon. So you can see it's got straight lines going through it, and what that is, if you can just make it out, is it's all the growth rings going through the spoon like this. So if you see straight lines, you know it's been made from a larger piece like this, and they call it radial splitting when you split a wood like this. It's a big old piece of material, so I'll show you how I always process my wood.
And what are we working with today?
This is silver birch, same as the trees we've just been looking at. It's a beautiful wood to carve. It's not too hard, it's not too soft, and it's readily available, and it grows quite quickly, so yeah, it's good to go. Whenever you fell lots of trees, or you just leave a piece of ground to do its thing, so say a field, just got a field, it's always been a field, and you just left it, you get lots and lots of brambles and bracken like we've got over here, and then you'd start to get birch trees poking through, and that's why you've got this woodland now, because it's been left. It wasn't always a woodland. And they're all quite young, if you look. Even that larger tree there is only the same age as the birch trees, it's just a faster growing species. So it's quite amazing really how nature will landscape the land. And birch trees are the first trees that you'll nearly always see. That's how fast and how well they grow. And they're a very, very useful tree for lots of other reasons as well, like we did the bark craft video before, and firelighting, it's just the best thing ever. So we'll crack into this literally. So what I'm going to do is use a mallet and just a basic axe. It's nothing fancy, it's just a cheap axe that I'm not too precious about, but it's got slightly wider cheeks, that's what we call the cheeks there, than my carving axe has, so it'll split wood a bit more efficiently as well. With green woodworking, we're always trying to remove the very centre of the wood So we've got to get to it before we can remove it. And the reason why we do that is most of the cracks that you might get from using green wood are going to basically start from that point. When you split wood, if you split it down the middle all the time, you'll hopefully get a nice neat split as the two pieces fall apart. If you were to split it there, this piece would radically run out and you get two very odd shapes, and obviously one that's too small. So always try and go down the middle when you split. So I'm going to go for halves first. So I'm just going to put the axe on the end there, a couple of taps, and just take it out. Then the middle, take it out, and then all the way through. Okay. Now, I'd seen that crack there already, and I'm not bothered because I was going to remove that, so I'm really pleased that that's actually come off. So, I'll show you that. Okay, so we're going to go for quarters now. Now, I'm sure some people were screaming, why didn't you use a froe? That's not what they're designed for. This is so much easier to get through really big powerful pieces like this, and you can see it forms lovely straight lines. We'll go for an eighth. Are we on eighths? Yeah, we're on eighths. Okay, that's an eighth. We'll remove that pith now, that's gone. Maybe a bit of basic carving just to... It's not my carving axe, but even a rough one will get the worst off. Okay, let's go for the next one.
So something to touch on here, would you say this is also, in a broader scheme of things, an efficient way of splitting wood so you can get the most carving wood from it?
Definitely. Look how many you can get. I mean, that's just the one. So that's one. There's an eating spoon there. So you got, what have we got? Let's try and find all the right pieces. You got two there. So you had two there, two there, and two there. So 2, 4, 6, 8 on that side. 16 spoons out of that one log. And they'll be much easier to carve as well than the round wood that we looked at first from the sapling. It's lovely to carve this this straight grain wood. The other thing you get, if you're lucky, you'll get some some two-tone colour. So you get the heartwood and the sapwood. So you can actually make that line up with your spoon, and you can get that effect. What I'm saving this wood for is actually for teaspoons, because they're a little bit shorter than these. So I've got another piece ready to go anyway. So there you go. So that's how you get that effect. If you see spoons with the two colours on, you split the wood like this, draw your shape, and then turn it into a spoon.
So Paul, what's next in the process?
So next in the process we've got our what we call a billet, which is basically just a piece of wood that's suitable for making the spoon that you want to make. So in this case it's one of those eating spoons. It's on the thick side, but that's basically because, and I've got a template here, it's just to help me to visualise the spoon better. But if you imagine that with crank, you've got room to put that in there. So that's why it's that kind of thickness. Some of those others that we were splitting earlier are a bit on the thin side and on the short side, so they lend themselves more for the straight teaspoons. And that's what I'm always doing when I'm splitting wood. I'm thinking, what can I make this from? And it's often about the length of the log. So if you felled a tree, I'm thinking about, do I want cooking spoons, do I want eating spoons, or do I want teaspoons? So I'll deliberately cut them to length, and then turn them over, and then split them 8 or 16 times, and then that's my spoon material. But that's because of the tree surgery. But if you wanted to use the round stuff as thick as your wrist, absolutely fine, no problem at all. Just split it in half, and you've got 2 billets almost ready to go. So we're going to use this template just to
So this is a template you're giving to people to download for free?
It is, yes. It's available on the website. If you just go onto the link where it says templates, it'll be there with a few other bits of information. There's nothing special. It's just an egg-shaped bowl handle that actually is just so it's comfortable for your thumb. You can alter this as much as you like. You could cut little sections out of it and make pretty patterns. You can do whatever you like. But the idea is that it gets you going. And it really helps if you're learning. But it also helps if you're doing production work and you want to make lots and lots of spoons, because you can just draw a line all the way around and then switch off. Now I might draw this on a couple of times. I thought we'll draw it on. I don't normally draw it on now, but I think for the purposes of the video it'll make more sense if I do, because what we're going to do is put the crank in first, and that's going to be the low point of the crank. So I'll get the spoon that we were looking at. There's your low point, yeah, just there. So all of this top section's got to come out, so we'll do that now. I'll use my axe. So don't get too het up about what axe you use. The most important thing is the bevel, and this is starting to round off a bit, but you should have a reasonably flat bevel there. I like a little bit of convexity to it, and maybe a bit more on this side. Learn about bevels before you start buying axes, then you'll know what axe to buy. I very rarely spend more than a £5 on an axe. I've had this one for the last 10 years or so. It's been brilliant, and say £5 it was. I stuck a handle on myself. There's lots and lots of axes out there, but yeah, as long as you know your bevels and get it sharp, and then it'll carve just as good as anything else. Head weight is 800 grams, I think, on this one, but in total it's about a kilo. When you're starting out, you might prefer something like about 500 grams in total. That tends to be the weight of those. I think it's the Grand Spores wildlife hatchet. It's quite a popular little axe. Somewhere between that one and this one, you'll be good to go in general with most axes without getting too tired. I like the extra weight because I don't have to hit it quite so hard. I can just drop the axe on more, and I find that easier. But not everyone finds the lifting of the axe as easy with a heavy one. So axe use wise, most people tend to choke up when they're carving, and very sensible, obviously, because if you hold it here, you've got less control. You could miss, you could go into your leg, you could hit a friend, you might hit it in the wrong place and then it won't look like a spoon, it'll look like a stick. Choking up, as they call it, coming up near the head is where the control is. When you get a bit more proficient and you want a bit more power, just come down a little bit. Makes all the difference, that does. But wait till you've got the control before you do. So you'll see me coming all the way down here at some point. And that's where the extra power comes, if you like, the extra weight, as it can swing more freely. I always start from the bottom. There's two sort of ways of removing wood with an axe, so wood carving, if you like. First one's to sort of come in at the bottom and make your way up. We won't go much higher than that, because obviously I don't want to hit my hand. I'm obviously keeping my fingers right out the way, and I'm actually turning my wrist like this. There's loads of support there, and I've come in at that kind of angle. It's what, 40 degrees, something like that. And then what I do is I work my way from the top now, and I come down, and I'm going to slightly reduce that angle. And then you just get these big pieces coming off in a nice, predictable way, and you get a straight line. And if you can make straight lines, then you can carve down to a specific shape. So we'll do that a few times, and then I'll show you the next way to remove wood. So when you're getting close to a line, what you can do is a planing cut. So instead of starting at the bottom, we're going to start at the top. And you get it going, and you just follow it all the way down, he says. Sometimes in two goes. And that's a thinner piece of wood, which call it plane. If you get a plane, an old-fashioned wood plane, they won't be as thick as that, but you get these thinner pieces rather than big thick chunks. And you can get them to come off nice and predictable, and you can make a nice surface finish as well once you get down to a thinner section. So that's basically what I do. As I always do those big chunks first, get those off, and then use planing cuts. So you'll see me alternate between those two. They'll feel like a blur after a while. You'll just see the two mixed together, but that's basically how you carve with an axe. Keeping safe, not coming all the way to the top, and then you turn your work round to finish off the job. See, we've got down to that line now. I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll show you how to do these bits. I was going to do the crank, wasn't I? But at least we've done the demo on the axe work. Okay, so that's those two sections done. But I'll put the crank in now because that's the fun bit. Now what you can do is you can hit that several times with your axe and make basically you've released the tension in the fibres and you've made what's called a stop cut. I quite like using saws. It's just a bit easier and more predictable.
And what saw do you have there?
It's a Silky saw. So Silky are a well-known maker of, so I'll go down about that deep, a well-known maker of saws for the tree surgery industry. This is the one I've always used for the majority of my work. It's called a Silky Gomtaro. It's 300mm long and it's straight as opposed to curving like a sickle. Absolutely the best saw you could possibly buy. I love this thing, it's brilliant. I've got through, it's like Trigger's broom, I've got through so many handles and blades. Some of it's original somewhere, probably the sheath. But yeah, you have this dangling on the side of your harness, just clip it on, and every time you want to remove a branch, you just, good as a chainsaw. Honestly, they're brilliant. And I've used them for the last 17 years in green woodworking as well. It's quite a coarse tooth. You can see, I think the 8 there, I think it's 8 teeth per per linear inch. And this one is 14, look, so it's a lot thinner, lots closer together, finer. And they're the two that I like the most. And for spoons, this is more than adequate. And there's lots of Silkies on the market. Most people go for the Pocket Boy, but these are half the price and just as good. And it's the F180. And it's folding saw. Stick it in your bag with all your knives and everything. You never know you got it. It's brilliant. They do a coarse one as well. It's got the same teeth pattern as the first one I showed you, but in a convenient one. And that's what I use for bushcraft. I have one of those and a knife next to me all the time. Brilliant. But these fine ones are great. I really like these. Students get on with them as well. Much sharper than a Baco Laplander. So, right, we'll go into the crank. So this is where I've left a little bit of extra wood on here, and because I'm used to doing this, I'm going to come quite high up. I recommend that you leave a bit of extra holding wood on, so you can do your cranks. Okay. So I'm basically going to come down to this stop cut. I'm going to do it. This is another technique where you can twist. So the last thing I want to do is hit that hard and then all of this to come off. Okay, so we'll leave it there. I think that's the stop cut. Not quite deep enough, so there we go. That's that bit. Now I'll work on the other corner now. Probably able to see it better actually. Okay. And then you've got this centre ridge. So what I'm doing is working in strips of 3. 1, 2, and then down the middle. It gives you control, and you're not asking the axe to do too much. You're not putting too much stress into the wood. Okay. This is a bump cut, so you line everything up together, and you bring them down and give it a bit of a knock. So that's the first part, the cranking. It's probably a bit over cranked, to be fair, but we'll be all right. So this bit's always quite tricky to remove because you've got nothing to hold on to, and you don't really want to be holding it like this and chipping away. So what we do is we work from the side, and the safest way to do this is to hold it like this. And this takes a bit of practice. That's the first part. I always work in threes. So what I'm doing, you'll see the axe stop in a sec up against the side of the block. That's your safety there, look. Can't go anywhere. And there should be a little bit of tidying up to do in the middle, if not more. So just there we go, that's the one. We're about there at that. Yeah, there you go, crank. So that should be fine. We'll live with that, I think. So I'll draw our shape back on. And that's the beauty of these plastic templates. You can bend it to suit, and they last for ages as well. So you've just got to line up where you want the bottom of your crank to be. So I think somewhere around there will do. So this was an old school folder from my daughter's coursework. A bit of plastic. Milk bottles work well. They don't tend to have nice flat sections though, so sometimes it can be a bit awkward. Just a bit of card, you know, cereal box if you really want to. Just get going. I still use bits of card when I'm in a rush. Yeah, useful things, templates, especially with egg-shaped bowls. Okay, so we can use the saw again if we want to, just to get into here. Just simplifies things a bit. I often just use the axe, to be fair, but it's quite good if you're starting out to do it this way, or if, like I say, if it's your 15th spoon of the day, if this saves you a few minutes, you might as well do it. So, right. We'll come down this way first, I think. So there's your 3 cuts again. Okay, now I'll tidy it up to the line. Now I've not quite gone all the way, and I did that on purpose, so I like a little bit of a rough corner there so that I can turn my knife a bit easier. You'll see later what I mean. So I'll go down this way. And there's lots of people who make spoons this way. And there's lots of spoon makers who make them different ways, and it really doesn't matter as long as you're safe and you're having fun and you're making nice things. That's all that really matters. So a bit more to do there. There's no hard and fast rules, whatever you're comfortable with really. So we'll get these 2 bits off next. This is where you've got an overhang. Now just a conventional chopping block, a round chopping block will still have an overhang. So you don't need one as elaborate as this. This is just because I make a lot of cookses. But as long as you can hang it from the edge of something, you're good to go. Okay, so. So we're going around corners now. So that's only going to come with time. You just got to practice that one. So what I like to do now is stop all the big, scary, exciting axe work, and I get all the top sorted out exactly how I want it to be in the finished spoon, and I forget about all this, just forget about it. It takes a bit of time, but it's worth doing it now, and then you can use that as your datum point. If that's nice and flat and it's not got a twist in it, so your bowl isn't twisted to your handle, you've got the crank as you want it, and you've got the edge of the bowl nice and even, then you can just bring everything up to that line. You can choose which bits are fat, so you want more depth there, so you want strength, because you've only got a thin section here, but you want a deeper section there, and you've got to decide where that is. You've got to have something to decide that too. So if you've got this top layer, you can say, oh, I want that thicker. So you get your pencil, and you could say that that was the base of the spoon. And you want a nice thin handle so that it feels delicate in the hand. So you come up like this, and that would be the final thickness of your handle. And then you don't want to stick a massive chunk of wood in your mouth, so you're going to come up here, and eventually that will be something like this. But you really need something to work to before you can decide where those dimensions are, thick or thin. So things will slow down a bit now, but hopefully still be interesting for you. Okay, so what I want to do is tidy this up. Can you see that that's a bit higher than that? That's annoying me. There's all this rough axe work that we've done, and there's a high bit there in comparison to that. So you could just get your knife and go all the way down there, but it'd be really hard. It's much easier if you've hollowed some of it out and you've only got these edges to sort of cut through, if you like. So that's what I'm going to do, and obviously it'll start the hollowing process of the bowl anyway. So I'm going to use a curved knife to do this. There's loads of different types on the market, but something around that sort of shape will do you. They call it a compound curve often. It's the only spoon carving blade I ever used. They're brilliant. You've got a flat section for when you want flat things, you've got a curved one for when you want curved, you've got like a transition area. You tend to get a feel for these things once you start using them, where you can use the blade.
What make is that one?
Oh, it's a pretty fancy one. I better not mention the maker because you can't get them anymore. It makes no difference though, because there's if you go to Robin Wood's Wood Tools website, he does a very, very similar one, which is extremely good. But that's the shape you're after, and it's this that's the important bit. It's the bevels. So you've got this drop off on both sides, and then a little bit of a round edge. I've reground this to actually work even better, so that to me is perfect now. I love the thing. A few scratchy lines. I was playing with a new diamond stone the other day, but it's still sharp on the edge. Okay, so I'm going to choke up. I'm going to use that part there most of the time, and occasionally I'll come up like there for this area, and then I'll use the flat area at the front. You're literally trying to make that shape in that wood. Okay, and you start from one end and just go. The first few cuts will be a bit rough. You try and go edge to edge, so not too curved at the front, because your lip's got to go in there to get the food off. If it's too curved, like if I used that bit there all the time, you'd leave half your food behind, and you'd end up. It's like trying to eat off a serving spoon or something, or a scoop. If you think of a scoop, it wants to be all as scoopy as you possibly can to get as much product on there, whether it's flour, sugar or coffee. But when you're eating, you want to flat a bit there. So anyway, so let's try and get into this. Start to establish the back of the bowl. That's what makes spoons look nice, is that line there. I'm not going to worry too much yet because that's going to change quite a bit. So that's hollow enough to eat off, but obviously it's not the finished thing yet. But it gives me access to these areas now to tidy those up, and this area here. So next up, a straight knife. It's just an Eric Frost, same blade as the 106. I've just put a fancy handle on it. But yeah, if you can get a 106 Mora knife, they're all Mora knives now, you can't go wrong. I'll show you an original one if I've got one in the bag. Here we go. So this is my old one. You can see I've sharpened it a few more times. I'm starting to lose the blade on it. So that's the 106. So if you only get one wood carving knife, get the 106. It's just that little bit longer, and you can do more with it as a result. It doesn't take a great deal of control to manage that extra length, and you know, I think they're even the same price. Right, okay. So I'm going to be looking down there, and that's too high, and that's a little bit rough. So we'll take more off that one first. Okay, so that's the same height now. So now it's just a case of getting this to come downhill initially. Okay, I'll just leave that on because it's easier. And I'll try and mirror that on this side now with a thumb push. So that's looking quite neat. And now I can come this way. It's looking good. And then this way. So we can talk about knife grips. That's a thumb push. You just hold it in your hand like you would if you were just sharpening a point on the end of a stick. But instead of using this hand, you're going to use this thumb to push it. Okay. And then what I'm doing is turning it around now. This is what I call potato peeler, but I'm choking up. Just like peeling spuds. Just got to make sure your thumb's out of the way, that's all. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. And some cuts you can use more than one cut, basically one grip, right, in one place. So here, there you can do the thumb push, look. But you could also come around this way with potato peeler, like that. Which is great if you're getting tired. Okay, I'm just chasing problems here, I think. I'll stop there. Okay, so that's that. I'm quite happy with that. I'm tidy the top up now. Now with handles, it's not just the surface finish I'm trying to sort out. I actually like a little bit of a sort of a double dip, if you like, so it goes zoop, zoop, like that. So that's what I'm going to do next. At the same time as trying to get rid of any twist. If you can see, there's a twist in it at the moment on the handle, a bit high there. Okay, so this is an assisted pull grip. So you're getting this curve, then it goes high, and then it curves and goes down. So I could take some more out of here, really start to get that going a bit. That's getting there, it's getting there, I like that, it's alright. Okay, so that's it, that's the top done. So I'll just blend it in so that the finial is at the top of that curve. There we go, so that'll look better now. Just getting there. Okay, so we'll draw the shape back on, and then you can do the sides and the underneath and all the exciting stuff. thing about the pencil lines, even if you work right up to it, it's still oversized, so it does give you a bit of a safety wood in case you make a little bit of an error. Right, back to the knives. I think we'll go to this. There's a little tram line appearing on that other one, so what I'll do is I'll use the axe to thin it down now, so I don't need any of this. It's all a bit excessive. So I'll get the axe. What should we do first? We'll do the handle. So what I'm thinking about now is a rectangle at the end, which we haven't got. We want this to be like a letterbox, if you like, a bit high there. So I know now to concentrate down that side with a planing cut. Get something like that. Okay, starting to get that curve. Starting to get some thinness. I think another pass will be better though. And are we parallel? Yep, we're parallel, which means the same that side as that side. These two surfaces running together. Starting to get there now. Way too thick there though, so we'll address that as we work down the back of the bowl. Okay, so that's that all done. It's a little bit deep there. I might do it now. Sometimes you get to the point where the axe starts to become a little bit clumsy and you think, if I picked up the knife, it might take me longer to remove the wood, but I get a better, more predictable shape. I think that was worth just doing with the axe. So it's just these two corners to do now. And it's a case of just dropping the axe on it and just, with a lot of curves, it's just about moving the wood itself, not trying to reach around with your axe, but there is a little bit of both going on. So you just start a little curl and then stay in it. Can you see that's what we're aiming for now, the bottom of that little V shape that we've made. And one side helps to support the other. And it just gives you something to focus on with the eye, aiming for the bottom of that every time. Okay, we'll just get a saw and cut that off and we're done. Maybe just take those off, just because I can. Again, it's knife work really, but it's quicker with an axe if you're careful. That's annoying me. I want to get it off. Don't have to. But yeah, we'll call that done.
So Paul, we got the rain pattering away on the shelter.
Yeah.
So guys, I should have apologised in the beginning. We got quite heavy winds and rains in the UK at the moment. So Paul, Coming back to the spoon, what have we got
Yeah.
next in the process?
Well, it's all the knife work now. So we've already got the top profile pretty much where we want it, but we can tweak it. But we're going to continue to bring these bottom sides up to where we want them to be. And we'll just think about obviously getting down to that pencil line and getting rid of any axe marks and just tweaking it really, making it nice. So this is where it's quite slow, this process. The axe work's 5-10 minutes to get to this stage, but the knife work could be another half an hour. And if you're really taking your time, the entire process for me can sometimes take over an hour. I'll really go for it and just obsess about all the little tiny details. I've actually got slower as the years have gone by. So initially started out quite slow because I didn't know what to do, and then as I knew what to do, I was like, it's like passing your driving test for the first time. You just want to just go, don't you? And then you have a bump maybe, and it's the same with this, and then you go, oh, hang on a minute, I could improve the things that I'm doing by if I just slowed down a little bit, and that's where I am now. I tend to slow down a bit too much sometimes, but anyway, as long as they look nice at the end of it and they feel good in the hand and the bowl, that's the main thing. So we'll just get a straight knife and we'll just start to, if you look down on the top profile, that's probably the easiest way to think about tackling, the rest of the spoon, is to work down to this edge. So at least the top edge and the sides will all be done, and then it's just the bottom one really to play around with. And then we'll talk about putting bevels on things, finishing the finial, and hollowing out the bowl properly to almost finish. And this is green wood, and it's very green as well. So we'll only be. I try to do all the carving in one go, but it is beneficial to come back to them when they're dry, just to tweak them, just to make them absolutely perfect. Because often a little bit of grain might just lift up and do something, in 2 or 3 days' time that it's not doing now. So it's worth it. So anyway, we'll get into it. So I tend to use 5 knife grips. You've probably seen these before. Spoon carving, luckily now, is quite a popular activity, but when I started I didn't know anybody that did it, and it took me 2 or 3 years to finally meet someone that did. And then that was in the bushcraft community. Green woodworking still there wasn't that many people doing this really. And then Spoonfest came along, luckily, and which is a carving festival in the Midlands, and I went to the first one, and I thought it was brilliant. I learned so much. I could already make spoons, I could make them fairly quickly, but when I saw all that, it's like looking at a table. I love putting spoons out now on tables because it just reminds me of that first time at Spoonfest and seeing amazing spoons from particularly from Yogi Sundqvist in Sweden, and then seeing some of the American carvers work. And then people like myself were like going, "Ooh." I didn't want to put my spoons on that table, you know what I mean? It was a bit embarrassing. So anyway, I'm proud to say that I've been able to put them on there with quite a lot of enthusiasm. So anyway, here we go. So 5 knife grips. First one is you just hold it in your fist like this, like wood. If you, like me, used to play in the woods as a kid and you had a pocket knife, you'd hold it like this, and you put a point on the end of a stick just because you felt like you had to. Quite good for marshmallows and sausages and things like that if you like lighting fires. We used to have a big campfire and we used to just cook all sorts of stuff on there, steal frying pans off our mothers and fry eggs and make sandwiches in the woods. It was really good fun. So you just hold it like this. It's called the forehand grip, although it reminds me more of a backhand grip in tennis, to be quite honest. Don't use it that often though. There's not a lot of control because you come through the wood and then you come flying out at the end of the wood, and you might go somewhere that you don't want to go, or you might cut somebody, and that's why I'm working to the side of my body. I'm not cutting anywhere in the inside of my legs here. Think of this as the danger triangle. Don't cut anything in here, but out here, that's not too bad, as long as your elbows are on your knees. And then you can work out here. But when you teach somebody this, they start doing this, and they start doing this, and they start doing this, and then they can end up here anyway. So you have to reinforce that you just don't do anything in this area. Femoral artery, you sever that, it's pretty much game over, to be honest. So we're working to a side today. So forehand grip. Quite a lot of this back can be done with it. Just the rough work. When you're not close to a dimension or a pencil line, you can just hack away. And it's basically the sort of in-between stage between an axe and fine knife work, in that you can waste off the chunkier bits with these less precise knife grips. Get that down to thickness. I'm already wanting to start with the grips, but we'll work with that one for now. An alternative to that for doing big chunky, wood removal with a knife is the chest lever grip. Where should we use this one? We'll use it on the back of the bowl there. Again, you could just play with this for quite some time. But I get tired doing that, and I've got a bit of a thumb injury going on, this tendon here, so I find that hurts after a while. It's nice to know that you've got a couple more grips in the bag, so that you can deal with that as you get injuries, and I get injuries all the time, getting old. So what you do is, we held it like that for the forehand grip. I'm going to turn it a quarter turn, so I'll try and show you. So we're going to go from that to that. So it's a quarter turn with the edge facing my right hand side if I'm right handed. If you're left handed, do that. Okay? So a quarter turn. We put the knife on the wood. Okay? And we're going to form like a cross, like a pair of scissors. Like this. Okay, and I'm going to put my fingers on my chest with my fingers pointing to the sky, and they stay there. And what you do is you lever off them, you use your little finger like a hinge. If you do that, then you won't come off, and you won't lose the power and the control, and you won't end up just doing a funny forehand grip anyway. Okay, so what you can do is you can do big powerful cuts like this and remove quite a lot of wood. See if I can get his head.
Shrapnel.
Yeah. And then what you can do is dial that down, and you can do nice, precise ones. And like any cut, try and use all the blade. And that's why I like 106s. Use all the blade, and you're not making one bit go dull and another staying sharp. And you can also slice. So if you just push down there like that, that's quite hard. It doesn't want to do that. There's less control. If you slice, use all the blade, it's so much easier. People often refer to tomatoes when they do that. If you were to just push down on a tomato, you'd probably squash it. But the minute you pull back and slice, it goes straight through, and it's just the same in wood. Okay, but we're getting to the end of those sort of power grips now. We're going to not really have the control we want, so there's three others. First one is the potato peeler. So now we're going to turn it so that it's all the way around, 180 degrees, and it's going to face towards yourself. It's this thumb that's going to provide all the power. And you put the thumb on the wood, and you're going to squeeze this hand like that. I often get people to practice like that so that they deliberately don't line the thumb up. There's no need to do that, it's just as much power there as there is there. So that's done. You can faff about and tickle it forever and a day, but that's the idea of that cut. You just turn it around, work blind. Just check more often. The last thing you want to do though is come all the way around there, because that might pull that off. So what I do is I'll work to about there, and then I turn it around and we can show you the next grip. And the next grip is a thumb push. So I'm going to turn it around so we're in the original grip, that forehand grip. But we're not going to push with our hand, we're going to push with this thumb. I think we showed this earlier, didn't we? Just like that. What you can do is you can push with your thumb, but you can also pivot off it as well. When you do more powerful stuff with this, it's a very powerful grip actually, then you can achieve quite a lot. So we'll just turn it around, back to the potato peeler, just nibble that off there. We'll get it roughly to the pencil line, and then I'll have a look at the overall shape later and decide, because that's already saying that's too high compared to that, so it's not necessarily true to stick to that pencil line. Okay, and then we'll do some more. What should we do here? We'll do this one, potato peeler. That's quite good for getting in there. And then choke up and use the very tip so you can go around the corners. That will go around a corner way better than that thick section there. Stop there. So this is typical problems with carving that people come across, and you get sections on spoons and cups and bowls where this happens. Think of this as a valley. Okay, you can always go down the valley, but you can't come back up the other side, because if you do, you get all the grain gets stuck. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll go down here with a thumb push. Happy days, just loving it. Oh, really, really nice. And try and come up there, and you get stuck. Doesn't want to know. And what that causes is like a line where the two meet. So I'll come down. Happy days again. But I can't come up the other side. So you end up with this line. And a lot of people chase that for quite some time and still aren't happy with the end result. So the trick is, look at this. Let's pop him over there. The trick is to try and come out the cut just before you come up the other side with very, very thin cuts and a very sharp knife, and work your way to it. And for now, that will do me. And what I'll do is I'll wait till it dries, and that'll be even easier to sort out with the same technique. And this won't be as wide either. So anyway, only one more grip to show you, and that's the pull grip. So if you were to have a long piece of wood, say an axe handle, and this is the one I use all the time on axe handles, you would go from the forehand grip all the way around to the potato peeler, but this time you put your thumb over there and you open up your hand a little bit so you can see all your knife. And that means you can pull towards you, and then your thumb won't get stuck up against the axe handle and rub. It's out of the way. It's the same with spoons. But to give it even more control, we're going to push like we did with the thumb push with these fingers on the back. These fingers hold the spoon. These aren't doing anything anyway. You might as well just push with those. And you'd be surprised how much control you've got. Okay, so that's not taking any power, any energy really, or any strength. That's why it's all about technique. Okay, no effort at all that, but loads of control. And then I've still got some extra material here, so we'll just nip that off. Okay, that's the worst of that. This, I want these to sort of become rounded, so less at 90 degrees. So I might as well get that off now. And what I'll do now is I'll just flip between those last three grips probably, and occasionally the first two, the forehand and the chest lever, and I'll just nibble away. It's just good old-fashioned whittling now. So still quite big, chunky bits to come off. But again, like with all the other grips, you can go fine with it as well. There's fine, look. Yeah, much finer. But I just know there's too much there for now, so. Now, stick to the routine. Let's get over here a bit. Always thinking about, is that deep enough? I think it'll be fine. So if that's as deep as it gets, everything's going to run off and become thinner up to this point. So I'll call that final depth there. I do use thumb push a lot, I must admit, especially on the back. Gets a bit sore after a while, which is nice, so it's nice to know you've got alternatives. It's gorgeous wood to carve birch, especially when it's this green. So you often see long facets like this on the back of spoons, and it's sometimes just a nice way to show people that you've got a certain method of making them. You can use it for decoration, but it's literally there because it's the grip to use in that situation a lot of the time. Rather than nibbling away at it, you get these nice long facets rather than chipping away, and it's got to go in your mouth, so you want it to feel nice. So I'm still thinking about that thickness, and everything else just tapers off from that point. So I'm not even worried about the bowl, as long as I leave enough wood there to make the bowl. I use the back of the bowl to determine the inside. But then again, this is just my way, you don't have to do it this way. Getting in the zone, Zed. It's to go all quiet. Okay, so starting to get a bit of control over it now. This is where you start to see the really small bits that you wouldn't have seen, say, 15 minutes ago, that just really annoy you, that you want to get off. I want to form, they call this the keel, where it goes fat to thin, like a boat flying through the water. So trying to make it central and not too thick, not too thin. You don't want to go really thin because you need a bit of strength there, and it's only straight grain wood as well. It's not like a bent branch. Right, I'm going to hollowing now. So back onto the bent one. So deeper at the back, flatter at the front. Checking thickness now, so I'm using my thumb and fingers like calipers. Okay, it's looking a bit deep there, so I'm going to take that off the bottom because I know that back bit now is almost as deep as I want it for the way that it goes in your mouth. So my lip is dragging nice now. Yeah. So I don't always do that on customer spoons, but I'm just showing you. So I'm going to take that extra thickness that wasn't needed off the bottom, and then I'll just blend that in. If anything, it's a bit of looks as well. You're trying to make it look nice. And it's normally making it look nice. It is a result of just taking off the bits that are unnecessary that you don't need. It's just removing weight from the spoon. If you get the famous book by Ville Sundqvist, Swedish Spoon Carving Techniques, he talks about that quite a bit. Definitely worth buying. I got my copy when it was out of print. It cost quite a lot of money. I got it from America, and it's so nice to be able to see that you can just pick it up off a internet site for whatever it is now, £20, a bit less than that. Now, slowing down a bit too much now, so I think you get the general idea. A few more minutes and that'll be perfect. So we've got that thinness there. Let me take a bit more off. Always take more off there. So we've got the thinness there for holding. Might be a bit too wide, but then wider ones are nicer for decorating. You get more information on there. I've got that fat bit there, which adds strength in that direction, but it's also nice to put your finger against it when you use it. We've got all the material we need there to finish the bowl, and I quite like the general shape. A little bit of a chunk missing there, but we can sort that out with bevels. It's fairly symmetrical, I think. You probably see better than me, to be honest. You always can on cameras, but and there's not too much of a twist in it. So I think what we'll do is probably just do a few little bits for now, and then we'll leave it to dry. It's always worth just coming down here one more time. Now you've got another one of those valley problems. You've got the two sides of the valley coming down. It's almost in miniature, but this is an awkward one to chase because you haven't got a lot of spare material. There we go, it's gone. And that was a bit higher, you see, than the other side. So we'll just nibble that as well. And then we'll tidy up the outside again. Just taking off those high spots. Can always come in here a bit more. I think I'll get that when it's dry. And then just to tidy up that, we'll use the spoon knife, the bent knife. But before I do that, I always put my bevels on. So a bevel is basically getting rid of this sharp edge by putting a chamfer, 45-degree cut all the way around the spoon. That strengthens the edge, and I always do that now, and then I finish the bowl. So only very, very slight. You can always make it wider, but if you go straight for too much material, it's hard to recover that. And it softens all the edges, makes it look nicer, makes it feel nicer in your mouth. It means you don't need sandpaper. Strengthens everything. Suddenly starts to feel really nice when you do this. You can't rush it, you can't do it straight away. You have to right at the last minute. Otherwise you put bevels and everything, and then you change all the design, and then you have to do them all again. I'm terrible for doing that on cookers. I think it's done, and then I decide to change everything. A bit more work to do around there, to be honest. Just the tip of this knife isn't quite as sharp as it could be, so I might swap over to the other one. Yeah, we'll deal with that later, I think. Let's go in though. Yeah, Instagram picture. Been done to death, that does. Okay, I'll just whip these off. I'll take a bit more off that. Sometimes the pencil lines are distracting, so I get rid of those. See what you're trying to make a bit more. Yeah, I think that's what it is, isn't it? There we go. So it's a bit on the chunky side though. I think I'll come back to it. It's feeling a little bit delicate. Freshly sharpened blade I think is needed there. Again, bevels on everything. Makes it look a bit more 3D as well when you look just from the top. And then around the top. Just give it a flick. Normally a bit more random approach to the top. Helps it look more like a branch, like a petal. I don't know, it's getting there, isn't it? Let's just faff about with the bowl a bit. So because we've got that bevel, we've got a little bit of protection. Wouldn't normally come right to the edge like that and drag it over, because it can curl right over and it can remove the edge of the spoon. So I'm being quite careful, thin cuts, and trying to come out just before the edge, and then hoping the bevel takes the rest of the pressure, the strain, should we say. And it's getting a bit furry now as well, so probably best to hang fire till it dries.
So for those that may not be familiar with the concept of letting it dry before you do finishing cuts, would you kindly explain to those a little bit newer to spoon carving why that is the case?
It just tenses up, so if you remove the moisture, it just becomes a more solid surface. I can feel it now, and it will just become a problem. It will become really apparent if I kept on going down through there. It becomes furry, and all the fibres stand up on end. They've got no strength. When they become stiff and dry, you can just slice through them much easier, in a much easier way. It's softer and easier to carve now. It all looks very dramatic, getting all these lovely shavings and whatnot. But as you get to the finer work, you don't need the ease of green wood like you do for removing all this wood that we've done so far. You need the reassurance that it's really super strong and you can just nip through it. And it only takes, if you just left that in the house overnight, in a warm house, it would dry anyway. But if you put it, I just put them straight on top of radiators, and when I'm in a house. If I was in the woods like now and I was on a week's course or something and I wanted it to dry and finish it, say by the end of the week, just like that in the sun somewhere, and obviously cover it up from the rain. So I just leave them on surfaces like that underneath my tarp, and they dry quite quickly, a couple of days. You can come down this way and then try and get underneath it and just nip those off. I'm not aiming for perfection yet. I'll come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh blade, nice dry fibres. Yeah, it's a bit too furry. It's nice to get the majority of it off. You just got less to do when you come back to it. Should call that done for now.
Perfect. So the last thing we've touched on the drying process.
Yeah.
Finally, oiling. What's your process? Do you oil? If you do, what is your process for doing so?
I do oil, yeah. If you just wanted to try a bit of this out for the first time, just go to the supermarket and buy walnut oil. that's fine. I believe there's far less problems with walnut oil than there is anything to do with peanuts, but obviously it's been the same factory, so you might have an allergy problem yourself or somebody else. So if you don't want to do that, any good quality cooking oil, the cold pressed ones particularly, grapeseed's good, and oil rapeseed. The creme de la creme is flaxseed oil, the food grade linseed oil, and there's different grades. The stuff from the health food shop, that's really good. The stuff that you actually drink, you know, like a spoonful of it per day. You can buy it from dedicated woodworking places now, and that's where I do. I get this stuff that's been shipped over from Sweden. One of the things that can make an already good oil, cold pressed food grade linseed oil or flaxseed oil is the same thing, even better is to have exposed it to oxygen and light initially to start the process of curing. And the whole process of this is the point of this is to get oil into that spoon, into the grain and onto the surface to solidify, because if it doesn't solidify it's just going to go rancid, and that's what happens with olive oil and mineral oils. They don't cure, they don't solidify, they don't polymise as they call it. So yeah, linseed oil, food grade, cold pressed, Swedish stuff if you can get it, pre-oxidised they call it, is the thing to get. It's brilliant. But like I say, just go to the supermarket and get just any good quality cold pressed cooking oil. Grapeseed should eliminate most of those nut allergies, but I imagine there's been a nut in just about every factory in the country at some point of a food processing place. So yeah, I just put it on. What I tend to do is warm my spoons up first. So if they're nice and warm in their warm drying place, that's a way to go. You can warm your oil up first. I often put my oil in a saucepan, warm it up. You know, a container over the fire or something, and that'll penetrate even better then, and it'll start the drying process a bit faster. Leave it on there, and then the really good stuff that dries within a couple of weeks on something as thin as a spoon. Just a thin layer all round, one layer maybe, two at the most, and then happy days. Bigger things like cups, you really need to immerse those and soak it up, because it's literally all end grain on four sides, and if you don't, then it's going to start leaking. So because there's more oil there and a larger surface area, I like to let those dry for minimum of 4 weeks in a warm place, even if I know it's only going to take 2. If you're using a cheaper oil, something like walnut or grapeseed, or one of the lesser linseed oils, then I would wait 2 months, and then it'll be hard and dry, and you'll be good to go. And then it's waterproof-ish and very durable, and it'll look nice and it'll feel nice when you use it. And yeah, that's about it really.
So to kind of wrap up then, so at this stage you will let it dry for 1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
You would then do the finishing cuts. You would then let it dry a little bit longer before you oil.
Oh, once you've done the finishing cut, straight on the oil.
Straight on the oil, yeah?
Straight, just chuck it in there. I just fill the bowl, that's normally enough. Rub it around with my thumb, and then any excess I'll just wipe around the back, pull up the handle, bit on the end grain there, and job's a fish. And then I just pop it down somewhere dry and warm, and let it do its thing. And there'll be trays and trays of them, you know, they're all over the place.
So there you have it, my friends. That is a wrap for this video. Paul, thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
So, a final recap. Paul has very kindly put together a template for you to download for free. So what I've done is I put a link in the description below this video, and also pinned to the top of the comments. On that page, you're going to be able to download the template for free to follow along with this entire tutorial. Also on that page, you're going to have the opportunity to join Paul's email newsletter. If there's one thing I would ask, is if you gain any value from this video whatsoever, as a kind way of saying thank you to Paul, it would be awesome for you to join his newsletter, where you can be kept up to date of everything Paul has going on in terms of courses, teachings, things he's getting up to in terms of his own carving, etc. So there's going to be a link for that on his page to join his email newsletter. And thirdly, there's going to be an opportunity, if he has them available, to buy spoons similar to what he's carved in the video and other spoons that he also carves. One thing I actually forgot to mention earlier on in the video is something I found throughout my own carving journey, and that is when you're following along with a template, it helps so much to have an actual physical spoon in front of you, especially when you're a beginner. I don't know if it's something you found as well.
It is. When I was still learning, and even a couple of years after that, I was buying other people's spoons. Very selective about whose I bought, and for certain reasons, you know, wanted to figure out how the bowl works, all the stuff I just talked about. It was because I had other people's, so I'm not trying to sell my spoons. But yeah, it does help. The template's great for just looking at that flat front image, or maybe the side. Yeah, when you get the real thing, it's, oh god, I didn't realise it looked like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's totally different to what I thought, and it does help. Just get one or two from different makers. Get other people's, I don't mind, but yeah, it does help.
Yeah, so you can have an opportunity there. Like Paul's just illustrated, I found it helped myself, and there's other people I've suggested it to, and it's transformed the spoon carving. Because now you've got something physical, 3D, tangible to look at, and all of a sudden you can see subtleties and nuances in a spoon that's already carved very well in front of you. So now when you're carving your own, obviously you can reflect back and forth. Using that kind of physical spoon in front of you. So like I said, everything on that page linked to down below. Also, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link to Paul's Instagram profile. So Paul is very prolific. He's got a whole back catalogue of images and videos of the plethora of things that he's been carving and will continue to carve. And it will be in the world to me if you go and check him out on Instagram, if you're on there already, and give him a follow. As I mentioned at the very beginning, this is part of a mini series. So this specific tutorial you watch here is part of a 2-part spoon carving series. In the next one, what Paul's going to be demonstrating is production spoon carving. So he's taken a lot of the principles he's outlined in this video and streamlining it, and allowing you to use the principles outlined here to carve a more simpler spoon a lot quicker. So to access that video, if it's already out by the time you're watching this video, there'll be a link to that below, and I would highly encourage you to watch that so you can kind of see how the two interact and interlink. So are there any parting words from yourself?
No, just spoon on.
That's it, man. Better words, man. I couldn't think of better words to kind of end off on, right? So guys, I really do appreciate you watching up until now. Paul, a sincere thank you once again.
Thank you.
So guys, I shall see you in the next video. And until then, as always, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. From Paul Adamson and myself, Zad Outdoors, peace out.